Hello! In this episode, I'm gonna present to you the prophecies of the French nun Mary Julie Jahenny, which are the most detailed out of all verified prophecies which I could find of the dramatic transition time, which seems to be very near. Although many of the described events will be local to France, still the information will be very useful and informative for all people because, as she says herself, France will be the first or one of the first to experience this type of events, and then very similar scenarios will happen all around the world in almost all countries. The clarity with which this lady saw our times is just absolutely amazing. Such details like how would they import foreigners in France, let them do crime and not prosecute them for their crimes, and then how the secret sect would infiltrate the government, create a artificial financial crisis to the point that the people will be so frustrated that they will start to destroy their own cities, which is not yet happening to the extent which she described, but definitely the Yellow Vests movement seem to be the early birds of something very, very similar. And it's not that she just got a few details right, she got everything right. Not like that American female author who recently became famous because years ago she wrote about a disease which will epidemic which will take place now, and the people will wear masks. And when one reads the exact quote from that American book, one is really struck with wonder. Wow, this is so precise. And immediately I found a copy of the book, and the entire the entire book is filled up with thousands of very detailed predictions, and just one of them came out true. This is pure chance. The rest is absolute garbage. It has nothing to do with the reality of our times, and it is clearly written by a TV brainwashed person. So Mary Julie Jahenny is not that type of seer that gets few details right, and the rest is highly questionable. She is really the best. In addition, she is an approved seer by the Catholic Church, which now is pretty much pointless, but at the time the church was not that rotten and corrupt, and their standards of verifying if one has real messages from God were extremely high. She was scrutinized by doctors and very, very critical clergymen who were supposed to evaluate her, and nobody could find any fault with her ecstasies. She predicted during the time she was examined many things that would happen in a few days. She told all that in detail. You can find it in the free online book about her. She did make some predictions for the historic developments from the time she left Earth until our current moment, and all of that came true. So how reliable is her information? Absolutely, as reliable as it can get. And one last point on reliability. As I was going through her prophecy, I noticed a few minor details that were exactly correspondent to the prophecies of Otrok Vyacheslav, and that is very important because he was born in the remote Russian countryside during the time of the Iron Curtain. So he was born after her, but the chances that his family could have made up the story at that time, copying the events from some very little known French prophecies, that is practically impossible. Because interestingly enough, although she is approved by the Catholic Church, they do not preach her prophecies. Not at all. Their speeches are like far left political party speech. The two details which Jahenny and Vyacheslav share and struck me most out of all are number one, that the fighting, the war will continue even after Christ openly manifests and kills the Antichrist. And number two were the exact details of this new religion that is coming, the religion of the Antichrist, how they are gonna patch it up using elements from the existing religions. So Jahenny, in her visions, she has conversations with the Spirit of Christ, Mary, Saint Michael, and other saints. And first of all, why do they give these prophecies? Why do they give these warnings? As they say themselves, everything will strike very suddenly in otherwise relatively peaceful times, completely out of the blue, and all of a sudden it will be like hell. And the people who will not know these prophecies, they will be confused, they will be in total panic. While those who know them, they will actually rejoice, because first of all, they will know that all the calamities, although extreme, will be very short-lived. And second of all, when the storm is over, the humanity will be finally cleaned completely from the parasitic cancer. Another extremely important thing in this episode will be the recipe for preparing hawthorn tea, a very common herb, which will actually save the people, those who know about the recipe, from one of the terrible plagues. And yet another extremely important reason for which they gave this message, these prophecies to Jahenny, is to tell the people that during the last war, I don't know it is exactly the Battle of Armageddon or the war in general around Jerusalem against the Antichrist, that war will unfold in such a way that at one point it will really appear that the Antichrist has won, and they will announce it, and they will start all these marked people who have the mark of the beast, they will be celebrating and dancing all around the world because of the victory. So it is very important to know that Christ will appear slightly after their victory is announced. And obviously this is very important to know, because otherwise all the noble souls who are in hiding and are living only on the hope of the arrival of Christ, they may get confused when they hear on TV and radio that the Antichrist has won. Although Mary Jahenny was illiterate, she had no formal education herself, her prophecies were faithfully recorded by pious religious families who kept the archives as something sacred. The originals are published on the French website devoted to her, so obviously God made arrangements that the most important prophecies are delivered to us in a genuine form. As promised in the Bible itself, by the way, where it says that towards the end times, much more detail will be given to us. And I think the Jahenny and the Irmaya prophecies are some of the most important of that additional knowledge, if not the most important. So I'm gonna skip her description from the prophecies of our current times, how the government is plotting against its own people and the decay of morals and everything else, because it will be boring. For that we don't need prophecies, for that we only need to wake up in the morning. And I'm gonna give to you only the prophecies from the moment when the anger of the Lord breaks out. Although she does have predictions for the time before that, like for example the contraception. Mother's bowels will be hardened mercilessly against children, she said. And also one of the numerous prophecies about the scandals in the Vatican. The other prophecies come also from other seers and nuns throughout the centuries. About the Catholic Church, she says, holding it up to the ridicule of all nations having vilified celibacy. Large international church scandals are mentioned many times. Even before the first crisis in France, there will be painful news from these people, England, Persia, and Jerusalem. All will have been subjected to great wrongs. I foresee that at the exit of this disorder there will be a new reign for English land, and a choice will be made when suddenly death will come to strike the one who has the helm of its kingdom at that time. For this land it will become very hard, and it will be divided into 4 parts, because their wills will not be agreed. And yet at another occasion Jahenny specifies, we'll see that in the episode about England, that at that time England will have a queen. So we will have to see how England begins to slip into chaos and misery sometime before the worst starts in France, which most likely will be somewhere in the beginning of the pre-tribulation period, but also it can be somewhat later, at latest in the middle of the tribulation, at the beginning of the Great Tribulation. And we read more signs of the times, which will be exactly before the beginning of the Great Punishment. The military will be removed from France in the east and in the Arab lands, and the security forces will be reduced. It is during this troubled period infamous laws will be enacted that, amongst other things, establish control over power of religion and enslaving the clergy to the revolutionary power, persecuting all opposition. She describes the revolution as being instigated by the government, which is infiltrated by the secret sect. Revolutionaries will introduce the implementation of totalitarian regime with its expeditions, justice of all opponents, surveillance, denunciation, and this on the top of famine due to the deficient crop and the calamities, earthquakes, epidemics on man and animals, torrential rains drawing away. Big delay in agriculture will be one of the signs, forerunners of this revolution. So Irmaya says that the year before the worst starts, there will be excellent crop, while she talks about delays in agriculture due to torrential rains. It doesn't say the torrential rains will be the year before, so these two prophecies don't really contradict each other, but there was a third prophecy, again from Jahenny. In foreign land will not ripe any food. A rain of fire will reduce to dust the food of these people, where are mixed non-Catholic Christians and Mohammedans. For 3 years the potatoes will rot at the time of seed. The corn will not grow or stop halfway. Fruits will blacken, a worm will eat the inside before they reach the size of a finger. So the great drought of 3 years, which I have included in this chart, is mainly, but not only, based on Islamic sources. So there is a possibility that it is local to the Arabic Peninsula, because over there droughts are more likely to occur. Yet on the other hand, we have also some European sources, not extremely reliable, but they also mention a great drought of 3 years. So the overall impression is that there will be severe crop failures during the pre-tribulation. Maybe in different lands the reason will be different, and in some cases it may happen even before the pre-tribulation. So as far as this staged, instigated revolution, Jahenny says it will first break out in France and then spread to all the lands of the world. This violent revolution will have 3 main phases. It will not be continuous throughout the tribulation. The first phase will not be all over France, but it will be localized. Most likely that will be in Paris, either the Yellow Vests or some sort of new movement very similar to them, because initially the Yellow Vests started their activity as a protest to the government organized crisis. And Jahenny says that this is how they will be instigating the people this time, so it could be a development of the Yellow Vests movement or something new but very similar. Most likely people will be outraged due to the enormous euro inflation foretold by Meyer. And then the second two phases, they will practically destroy all France except Brittany, a region of France which is not to be confused with Great Britain, England. And the third phase will be definitely at the end of the Great Tribulation because of the events described, namely Christ arriving from the east with his small army to finally crown a righteous king of France who will rule during the Great Peace. But before we reach there, it will be hard. So the first of these three phases will last 3 months, while the second one will last only 1 month, but its devastation will be immense. Both Irma and Jahenny describe the destruction of Paris and France as done by its own people. The French themselves will reduce their country to ruins. And Jahenny describes how this will happen exactly in detail. It shall not be affected by foreign powers, but 2 parties will be formed in France, which will fight on to death. The party of evil will at first be stronger and the good side weaker. In France and Europe and probably everywhere else, the evil party is definitely the left. This doesn't mean that the right is an angelic, godly party, but it means simply that the left, they are much more active in legislating parasitic laws and tightening this parasitic tyranny all over the world. It is exactly the left wing that currently runs France. All this is happening, continues Jahenny, in the Chamber of Hell, the Chamber of Deputies in France, under the chairmanship of souls sold to the spirit of evil. A very black malice in the minds of these men. They want to lose France. It is sold to the enemies that you have despised, and amidst these enemies many others. It is a populace of all nations joined for the betrayal that is happening in the chamber of hell. Probably that populace is the European Union, and which is the exact enemy which everybody has despised. The one that also I receive lots of criticism that I'm not talking enough about on my channel, which is not exactly true, because I do talk a lot, but one has to listen carefully and get the hints. So this is what the evil spirits from the chamber of hell will do. At the moment when people are revolting due to artificially engineered economical crisis, they will make false flag events and blame the Christian clergy for it. Jahenny says, there are some who work undercover and while waiting to discard their priestly vestments to cause horror and abomination amongst the people. Scandals and all kinds of things will be expected. So exactly at that intense moment when the people are fed up with the artificially engineered economic crisis, they will play out these false flag attacks and frame up the Christian church for it. She describes how they will organize some sort of events which will look as if they are Christian gatherings, but actually they will be terrorist attacks. In such gatherings, first of all, they will kill, massacre lots of practicing Christians, and on the top of that, they will blame it on the Christians themselves, that they are the ones who are actually hatching terror, although they will be only victims in this case. And especially the young generation of France will buy this big time and they will raise up. And although Jahenny doesn't mention this explicitly, I'm sure that at this point the left, the political left, which will be organizing all this, they will also play out the card with the previous pedophile scandals of the church and all the other church corruption. They will send official written appeal to the Pope to reform the church in a sense that basically the people in the Catholic countries all over the world will not be obedient or related to him anymore. The Pope will be in such a dismay that he won't be able to even to answer in person. He will do it only in writing. And at this point, many of my listeners may think this is not extremely relevant or interesting to me because I'm not really religious, let alone Catholic. While others may wonder why would they attack the Catholic Church, which is so loyal to the parasitic agenda anyway? It is rotten corrupt already. And this question brings us to the really important stuff, which is that the devil, who is the mastermind of all these secret sects, he, quote, travels the world with his minions. They want to destroy the name of Jesus. They want to make him disappear. They will break the cross, even where rests as the dust of the Christians. Means even to the point of destroying the headstones in the cemeteries. Why? Because time allotted by God to the Lord of the hellish worlds has come, and he will have the right to openly rule the earth. He is no longer satisfied with undermining Christianity and stealthily corrupting them. No, this is no longer enough for him. Now he wants the people to openly worship him directly for who he is, and he will succeed. In the chamber of hell in Paris, the black laws will be passed. They be of a type of subtle and unprecedented evil that will be directed against the faith. They will be slipped amongst many other laws, and people will not understand what are they voting for. Only when they're enacted and come into action, people will realize that this is outright genocide, as massacres will be taking place all over. But it will be too late, because they will formulate the laws in such a way that it will be impossible to undo them. The deceit in formulation of these laws will be so subtle that most people will initially take them to be good and progressive improvements. And even those who will doubt them, it will just take too long to understand the sophisticated scam of the formulation, and the people will simply waste all their time if they try to debunk them. Yes, this is exactly how Jahenny predicted the things. I'm not reading the news, I'm reading her prophecies. I think the detail in which she saw everything is just amazing. And she was an illiterate woman. She was not some sophisticated writer or poet or anything like that. The Montmartre Sanctuary, known as the Sacré-Cœur Basilica, is already destined to serve as a theater for the impious and all those involved with human laws. The sanctuary of Our Lady of Victories would resist the cannonballs, the gunfire of the instruments of the world, and that the miraculous protection of heaven would in the midst of the debris. At many places, public meetings will be held in France on the subject of the guilty law. However, at the end, Jahenny sees only 3 worthy pastors that will speak out the truth despite the immense opposition, because these so-called progressive new laws will appeal especially to the young people of France, and effectively those who will openly speak against the genocidal laws, they will be a very, very small minority. The big crowds, they will be out on demonstrations and they will hold slogans, war to Christ and death to the church. Meanwhile, don't forget that Christ in his second incarnation is already born and an adult man, and he will be watching all that. The priests who will join the pedophile blood drinker club be even sending personal letters to the believers and righteous people in their districts, assuring them that the new laws are absolutely fine and they're actually against terrorism for your own safety. The vast majority of priests will go astray because they will be afraid of arrest and death punishment. Another prophecy tells that many others yet will be bribed to join the pathetic circus of the Antichrist. They will start confiscating properties as well. I guess it will be part of their war on terrorism, as they call it. Religious burials will be forbidden. The religious sacraments will be parodied. Satanic baptisms will be established. There will be many souls that will be possessed and make loud noises. This will be enforced by the police so rapidly that the priests will be literally dragged physically out of the temples. Few months before the worst crisis hits, there will be like mental madness and fear spreading everywhere on earth, and countless souls will be obviously possessed. The devil will appear in form of living apparitions. By the way, Otrok Vyacheslav also spoke about this. The Antichrist will be a Middle Eastern chap with a mask of joy. He will call his religion, his new religion, the religion of happiness. And she didn't say exactly that he will be a singer, but he will use the arts in most abominable fashion. She said, well, he might be only like a magician performer during these concerts, but she definitely tells that the churches will be turned into places of hellish rituals and dances. And they will have even their book and everything. It will be called the Book of the Second Celebration by the infamous spirits who insulted Christ during his first incarnation and will do the same now, and who await the reign of a new Messiah to make them happy. Many holy priests will refuse this book sealed with the words of the abyss, but unfortunately, most will accept it and it will be used. On the streets, in the cities, and the countryside, the infectious poison of the hellish propaganda will spread with an immensity and with the rapidity hotter than the path of the sun from sunrise to sunset. Well, it will be something like the corona propaganda now. Almost any official page you open will have a link to it, attracting your attention, channeling it towards their scam. You go to the shop again, all these posters and rules and disinfectants and stuff. And it will be same after they frame all sensible people as religious terrorists, they will start posting warnings against terrorism everywhere. The French clergy will be more responsible because it is more educated. Religion is more extensive than any other country, and for that they will be punished more severely. The Holy Spirit told Jahenny that men of power will have breasts pressed by evil that are also ready to crack to leave vengeance explode. Is this a reference to suicide bombers with vests which explode? Breasts pressed by evil, ready to crack to leave vengeance explode. This infamous law will come out with many others. No one will be able to escape it, or death at the bottom of the prisons. Or at least that will be the plan of those who are hatching the evil plan in the chamber of hell. Actually, they will have only 44 days. And that's why we need these prophecies, to know that many people will escape simply because they will know that all this will last only days, and all they have to do is hide. In France, this entire scenario is colored with the colors of Catholicism, but in other countries it will be slightly different. And everywhere they will target the sensible people and those who worship the true benevolent God. Many noble people will be killed, but these events will be followed closely by the vengeance of the Lord. The chapters of the history will be turning so fast at that time with such a speed that man will not understand how is war and peace made in these times. And before they know, 44 days are over. And it will be a most terrible moment for the ungrateful and the wicked who betrayed Christ, and this time will be without fear for the righteous at heart. So, at least in France, although the entire tribulation will spread over years, she says there will be reprises 3 times, 3 peak moments of very, very difficult short periods which will be extreme, and many people will die at once, but the rest will be kind of intervals where the turbulence will not be like a concentrated horror every day. The earth will shake from this place until sunrise, the space of 6 days, a day of rest, and on the 8th day the trembling will begin again. France and England will respond with their cries of despair. The land will shake so hard that the people will be thrown up to 30 steps or some other unit of measurement, not clear which one. The thunder will sound more brightly than in the months that it will lead up to what looks like the end of the world, with strange noises. So during this second wave, they will bring the least desirable foreigners from abroad, the dust from abroad, and they will be given liberty to do whatever they like without being held captive for the crimes they will commit. The dust from abroad, the foreigner, will be brought into France. The France will not be able to send them away. France's nobility will be lost when this happens. France, who was previously so beautiful, has lost her honor and her dignity. She will be invaded by heartless foreigners without pity. They will tear apart her children, they will destroy her enclosures, they will knock down her holy temples. The surrounding countries will also join this bloodthirsty revolution. Now we all know that boats with illegal immigrants are arriving daily by hundreds and thousands in Europe, and our doors here, the government has opened them wide for such people. And I want to tell you what I saw in a documentary of a journalist who actually went to North Africa to see where these boats come from. It is well known that they are organized by the human trafficking networks, those same networks which traffic women and children. So surprisingly, or should I say not surprisingly at all, their campaigns are openly advertised in the countries from where these people come from. The boats, they have open departures from government regulated ports, and they traverse international waters which are heavily guided again by military from the government. So don't think that these are self-organized boat trips. And once these people approach the European shore, the captain of the boat tells them to throw in the ocean their passports, and when they arrive they will say that they're from the war zone, Also, they are told to throw away their passports so that they arrive absolutely anonymously in Europe, and that makes it very difficult to put them in any category after that. And as we know, such categories, they just remain in Europe. If they are categorized, some law may catch them and eventually send them back or something like this, but when they are categoryless, they can just do freely whatever they wish. And also, we hear about humanitarian, so-called humanitarian organizations, which actually facilitate the arrivals of such boats in European waters. They are simply the last chain which completes this human trafficking operation on the European side. And then Jahenny says that the nobility of France will be lost when such people arrive. I think this is just the beginning of the arrival. When the tribulation starts, they will be importing probably much more people. Now they are just setting the network. But even now, certain regions in Europe, in France, I know better about Germany, there are entire regions when local people are leaving because they can no longer live in the conditions of daily crime and murder in the areas where the criminals settle down. Not all people who arrive are criminals. They are also polite families and sincere people. They also have that, so that there is a mixture and they have something sweet to show on TV. So as Jahenny says, very similar pattern will be followed in all lands, and especially the surrounding lands in Europe. And this is very true, not only in Germany, where people have to leave their own houses, the houses of their ancestors, but I myself, I am also from Europe. I cannot live in the region from where I come from. A similar type of people received municipal housing in a house just maybe a couple of 100 meters away from mine. One of them first raped a 60-70-year-old lady in the village, and the police did nothing. When he saw what kind of freedom they are given, next he went to the 4-year-old girl of the shopkeeper lady. He just raped the girl over there in broad daylight. And then what happened is that the very old men from the village took their guns, because in that area there are many hunters, and they went searching for that man. They could not find him. They only found his mother. They beated her almost to death. I'm not saying that I approve this. I'm just telling you the story, which is absolutely genuine, because I know all these families and all this happened practically around my house, although I was not there at that time. And after beating this lady, which I don't personally approve of, they told her that if we see anybody of your people from tomorrow on in our village, we will shoot them dead. We don't mind going to jail, we are old already. And within a couple of hours, then this entire group of non-local people, who were housed like 50 of them in 2 rooms, gathered their luggage and they went to live like something which resembled a greenhouse, like a long hut or tent made out of carton boxes and garbage nylon. And they squatted there for almost a year before they find another municipal housing. And the most interesting thing is that the man who actually raped the old lady and the child, he has a very beautiful wife and 3 or 4 children. And here is a very fresh new variation, because in France it is all working well and many people are arriving safely. Now they are taking them with the boats to UK, where they have government buses, and these buses always arrive well before the boats, so that there is minimal exposure, and the people at the ports, at the seaports, don't see much of what is happening. And this buses takes these people to well-known chains like the Holiday Inn, Radisson, and Hilton, where these people are being housed. And You can read the article yourself, and if people start inquiring what is this all about, they are called Nazis just for asking what is my own government doing. Now let's continue with Jahenny's words about this revolt. The civil unrest will come during the economic hardship. France will be flooded with people who are jobless, unable to file asylum or refuge. Agitators will go through the country and rile the workers up to revolt. The French people will become very miserable. All the doors have been wide opened to all languages, to all foreigners, and all those who wish to enter this cursed Sodom Paris. For a long time, the usurpers have hidden a violet fire, a fire half discovered under the walls of the great city of Paris. As soon as a little bit of bread is brought onto these purple sparks, at once they will form burning infernos that will devour homes and kill many people. Know well that these men without faith, who do not desire anything but disorder and death, use the powder derived from the coals of hell. In June and July the bloodshed shall begin, and the government will flee and take off like a bird to another country when it sees the carnage begin, to leave France free and its revolution with nothing to stop it. The guilty men who started all will suddenly be gone. It will be as if they were never there. And when they are gone, then the resounding cry will come from Paris. It will be the cries of the ungodly cheering the entrance of this bloody hour. These cries will continue for several days, then they will spread through the country. Do not build a house or remain in France. It will be torn over. Only Brittany will be spared. The cries from Paris that will initiate the carnage will first start with a horrific blasphemy, then there will be shouts, hateful songs, confused cries. The poor innocent people caught in the city will not have time to escape. Streets will be closed and passages blocked. It will be the time of a massacre. The terrible thunderstorm and lightning will come and last 2 days, but nothing will stop the 2 days massacre. Christians will die by bullets, some will die by guillotine. Now just a short remark about the violet purple fire powder mentioned before. Of course it could be a confusion, maybe in the original it was meant violent, but in case it is violet, actually there are some sort of explosive powders which produce violet mist when they evaporate, and indeed they are activated by, as she says, breath reacting with open air. And the time of their discovery was exactly contemporary with the time, the years when this prophecy was made. So when she said half discovered, that could very well mean that they're being discovered at that very moment. That is the potassium nitrate explosives. And also when she says that Christians will die by the guillotine, she's not just using an analogy from her own time, because there are a couple of other prophecies that actually describe this moment that the guillotines will return in France. So God from heaven will give partial protection to Brittany from the total annihilation that most cities and even many villages will face in all other parts of France. However, he will open it for the passage of the barbarians who will cross between 5 and 9 miles from here, probably the hermitage of the nun Jahenny, to go merge on the northern side. There They will have prepared the instruments that cut off the heads of Christians, those instruments of old that they remembered when over this place they performed this painful execution. It really sounds like a clear reference to the future guillotines. At the time of persecution, they roamed the streets carrying these sentences: death to the Christians, death to Christ. By the way, Jahenny said that this bloody revolution will start in June, July, and on the other side, Irmeyer said that at the same time there will be, he says the same thing in France, similar thing in France, and he said that the German thing will also start in June and July, so both sources definitely match. So from where will these people come? It seems mostly from North Africa. Also in the previous episode, Nostradamus described them as coming from North Africa, and this influx, this network for trafficking people that is already functional, it basically collects criminal elements from the northern African regions, mixed of course with normal people and families for a flavor, so that they can put up a pitiful explanation on TV. And the secret sect which organized all this, usually they in the prophecies they call it the secret sect, sometimes they call like the full name Masonic secret sect. They will make it look as if it is religion based, and also they will use it to distort people's ideas about what are the real religions about. Like when this hell starts, many people will start hating Islam because of this. And that will be exactly the opposite of what is happening, because those who will be faithful to the real Islam, they will be in the army of the Mahdi fighting this the core of this corruption, which is the Antichrist. While at the same time, the people in Europe and most likely America and the entire world, they will be groomed against Islam just because of criminals who are instigated and trained by forces which have nothing to do with Islam, just because these people, before buying into this dark propaganda, they had Islamic background. So in one strike, the secret sect, they will manage to instigate most hideous and cruel war, and at the same time they will organize everything in such a way that they will blame it on exactly the party which is fighting against this corruption, and the people will believe it. Few years ago, when we had these waves of rape ignored by the police in Europe, I saw an actual lecture of a false imam who was programming, grooming these men before they come to Europe to rape women. And he was speaking in front of a crowd of thousands who were cheering him as if he's holding a religious Islamic speech, while in reality he was talking things absolutely contrary to Islam, because in Muslim culture there is no room for any talk about justification for rape. The punishment is straightforward, being put to death for that. So this false imam, he was shouting at them and telling them that those women, that's what you should do to them. They are waiting for it. And Allah wants that. And what is the proof that He wants that? When you arrive there at the border, they will wait for you and they will care for you and they will give you more money than they give to their own people. That's what he promised them. By the way, these preachers, you can find proof on internet that they were trained in Europe by parties which have nothing to do with Islam whatsoever. And what happened later on when these people, this crowd who were cheering him up, when they arrived in Europe? They were met, in some cases, you can find footage online, by women, blonde women, kissing them openly on their arrival, unknown men. That's from the far left parties to show that they love everybody. They were giving them flowers, lots of flowers, and of course the government agencies, they provide them with more care than the local people. We have refugees here now in this region. They get very generous monthly payments, more than the local people who need help. I also don't have any income, but nobody is giving me any money, although I should be receiving by some sort of European laws, but it is practically impossible to claim them. While those people can claim anything and they will always get it because they also get free legal help. So let's continue reading the prophecies. A terrible prodigy will happen when the murder attempts happen and the crimes are being committed. A black and blue rainbow will appear, and red rain that will stick like paint. It will fall on the ground, but it will not be drinkable. A sign of terror will then appear. A cross in the sky. A blood rain will fall from extraordinary cloud for 7 weeks. A terrible burning will happen from the earth and will send off a terrible heat and poisonous stench. No one must open their doors or windows for 7 weeks. There will be a short respite after the first revolutionary crisis break out in Paris. Then those who call themselves winners and elevated in science will cause a brightness that will shake the big city Paris. They will not be satisfied with their work. That could be a reference to another hellish weapon idea of theirs, but they will not be satisfied this time. This chastisement, this punishment will leave its victims as those without life. They will still breathe with the ability to speak, the flesh raw like after a deep burn. This malady will be very contagious and nothing will stop it. It is a punishment from God to bring many souls back. Maybe this is the burning plague which Jahenny mentioned on few other occasions during different ecstasies, and seems to be described by other prophets as well, which you can find in the free ebook. Link is in the description, and also on this excellent website of collection of Catholic prophecies. Over there they use terminology like the Sacred Heart. That's how the Catholics call the upcoming incarnation of Jesus, and the Great Monarch, which also would refer to Jesus when he reigns as king during the Big Peace, or sometimes it may refer to the future local king of France, again during the Big Peace. And the link is again found in the description of this video. The burning plague malady will attack the heart first, then the mind, and at the same time the tongue. It will be horrible. The heat that will accompany it will be a consuming fire so strong that the affected parts of the body will be of unbearable redness. Patches. After 7 days, this malady, like the seed sown of a field, will rise rapidly and make immense progress. There is only one remedy that will cure it, and it must be taken in time, or it will not work. White hawthorn leaf tea. Even dry leaves will work. But the remedy has to be taken 3 times a day, and one must start taking it from the very beginning, otherwise it will not work. So the way to prepare the tea is to bring water to a boil and then put the leaves inside and cover them for 14 minutes. So Jahenny explains that people who valued the prophecies and knew about them, they will get saved by this tea, while those who don't care, they will die. And that made me remember that one of the numerous plagues during the tribulation described in the Bible, it says that it will wipe out only the marked people, those who have accepted the mark of the beast. So I don't know, it could be a reference to the same thing or not, but it's somewhat similar. This plague will strike so fast that people will not have time to prepare their souls to meet their Creator. The great plague will start from the center, Paris. Very few will escape it. The corpses will spread a stench that kills. But all this will not stop those who conspire in the chamber of hell, which is the National Assembly of France. They will plan to emerge victors from all this, and they will make even more laws, even more infamous than those before. They will send out even letters or summons that will ask for reinforcements to aid even more bloodshed. The evil ones in power will be the first to feel God's divine justice and suffer the punishment of God. First, there will be a terrible earthquake that will shake the earth to the heavens and swallow these culprits up, entombing them and sending their souls to the abyss. The fire falling from heaven and the fire of hell will mingle. Even water will resemble fire. The city will collapse and resemble a huge sandpit or quarry. There will be many collapses, especially in the center of Paris. All these rich palaces where the benefits of the nation are produced, all that the Lord will destroy in the form of a terrible collapse of land. All these tall buildings that are part of the bread of France will collapse. Probably she means the banks. God will catch by surprise those who work without thinking of Him, nor of His power that gives everything on earth. Well, that will be one of the easiest punishments for the Sacred Heart, as Jahenny calls Jesus, to accomplish, because the city of Paris is built practically on old gypsum mines which stretch for thousands of kilometers. It's like a huge maze of labyrinths. It is not difficult for the city above it to simply give in and get devoured. There will be also an attempt of a foreign army to attack France and take over in the midst of all this happening, but that will be unsuccessful. The Lord will prevent that from happening. And it seems towards the end they will also try to place an usurper on the throne as well, which will also be a failure. Although France will meet its destruction mainly by the hands of its own young people, at one point there will be also a foreign army entering. Quote, "The stranger will enter the kingdom of France with his army. He will make a length of space. He will cross the east and seem to come out from the bottom of the north. But God will not allow him to take the throne." 48 hours before the beginning of revolt in Paris, there will be signs in the firmament. Paris will be destroyed by a hail of fire. Only 88 people will be saved during the destruction of Paris. The punishment will be so severe that France will be practically depopulated, especially Paris, the larger cities, and the south of France. Only a few who hide underground will be safe. A person will have to travel kilometers before they see another soul. Also, there will be 2 days of darkness, but not complete, and then the more famous incident of 3 days of complete darkness. I think I will make a separate episode about this because there are really many prophecies about this. So there will be 2 days of darkness, which will be more like a warning, and then in like 37 to 40 days after that, there will be the 3 famous days of darkness. Just before the 3 days of darkness strikes, there will be 1. A very cold winter night. 2. An extremely hot wind from the south will come with great hail, followed by 3. A frightful thunderstorm of unprecedented proportions that will shake the mountains. And then the 3 days of darkness Lightning will zigzag across the sky from a mass of fire, clouds, and turn everything into ash. The air will be filled with poisonous gases and vapors, and giant tornadoes will rip up everything. The Sacred Heart says, I shall come over the sinful world in a frightful rumbling of a thunder during a very cold winter night. A very hot southerly wind shall precede the thunderstorm, and heavy hailstones shall dig deep into the soil. And since all this sounds almost like hell, there will be also real hell. And this will be the 3 days of darkness when Satan will be let loose on earth to really make it the way he wishes. It will be only the 100% real wax, beeswax candles that will protect us from the demons that will cry throughout the skies in the world during the 3 days of darkness. I think the blessed Catholic candles are a bit of a cultural element. Probably in India, the blessed Ghee Deepak will do the same thing. And I guess all over the world, all the sacred protection objects from the benevolent God will also provide protection. During these 3 days and 2 nights, the demons will appear under the most hideous forms. You will hear in the air the most horrible blasphemies. The lightning will enter your homes, but will not extinguish the blessed candles. Neither wind nor the storm can put them out. Red clouds like blood will ride across the sky. The crash of thunder will shake the earth. Sinister lightning will cut across the dense cloud in a season when it never occurs. The earth will be shaken down to its foundations. The sea will rise thundering waves that will spread across the continent. Blood will flow in such an abundance that the earth will become a vast cemetery. The corpses of the wicked and the righteous ones will litter the ground. The famine will be great. Everything will be in turmoil, and 3/4 of all men will perish. The crisis will break out suddenly. The lightnings of heaven will succeed with rapid violence. Fire from heaven will travel the earth to an appalling width. Cultivated lands will be devastated by the power of this fire. Grassland will be burned and reduced to a land completely stripped. The fruit will not appear. All the branches of a tree will be dry to the trunk. For 3 days the sky will be on fire with the divine earth. The earth will not produce food for many years after this. The fruit tree will not produce for 3 years. So at different occasions, Jahenny gave different estimates in terms of how much of the population will perish during the entire tribulation. Once she said that France itself will lose half of its population. 4 towns of France will disappear. There will be some villages without a soul. On a global scale, she says the earth will be depopulated by 2/3 to 3/4. The northwest of France will be particularly protected. It will suffer less than other places. Brittany is under the special protection of Our Lady, and it will be spared much of the chastisements. It will suffer less during the anti-clerical civil war, but it will not be spared during the times of the plagues. Another prophecy from Mary Jahenny is that France will become furthermore a Muslim country. This could have actually 2 meanings, at least. I can think of 2. And the first one is a tendency, actually, even 10 years ago already in France there were more practicing Muslims than Christians. Although this is the current statistics of France, of course, they are fraud as everything else, and we know what exactly they are exaggerating. Even this probably inflated percentage of Catholics, it is not a secret for anybody that they are Catholics only when they need a priest for funeral services and nothing else. They do not practice, while almost all of the Muslim population that they are practicing, they pray every day, they follow Ramadan. There are thousands of mosques, and some of them even sing the call for prayer on loudspeakers, like in the Muslim countries. And as more and more churches are getting closed in France due to absolute lack of visitors, they started converting them even to mosques. And it is a very practical thing because the Muslim people, they pray a few times a day, and it is an instruction from their Lord that when they don't find a mosque to pray, they can do it even in public, and that's what they do. So many people pray on the streets like that it even causes traffic jams. There are regularly clashes with the police. They are trying to make laws against that. They are converting churches into mosques so that people will have a place to pray. So if the practicing Muslims were outnumbering the practicing Christians 10 years ago based on official statistics, even, then what is the situation now after this massive trafficking of people into France? So certainly this could be one of the meanings of the prophecy of Jahenny, and the other one is something which I forgot to mention in the episode about Mahdi, and that is a prophesied massive conversion into Islam into the European lands. It seems that it may happen sometime during the tribulation because these newly converted people will join the army. They will want to fight against the Antichrist, the incarnation of the devil. So I don't know if these new converts will want to join just because there will be military conquest of the future caliphate at that time, or it will be simply the people, the normal people, who will decide to convert themselves just because the caliphate at that time will be offering a practical solution which will make sense to those who have not lost their mind completely. And the solution will be to eradicate the social structures and organizations by which the Antichrist is practically governing the entire earth. And since the headquarters of the Antichrist will be in the Middle East, he himself will be of Middle Eastern origin. Of course, the most normal reaction will be that the people in that area of the world will be the first one to organize military resistance, also because they will understand the actual parties involved in this conflict. While in the West, people they rely on the mass media and have a very distorted idea of what is actually happening over there around Jerusalem. And this information blackout around Jerusalem is already very bad, and when the crucial moment for which we have been prepared by this dark force since centuries arrives, at that time it won't be just dense, it will be like total and 100% darkness, and that is why the entire world will embrace the Antichrist. I will be making an episode specifically about the deceit of the Antichrist, where I will give you like 100 signs by which you can recognize him. But even without them, it is extremely simple. There will be two Christs, the real one and the false one. The first will be the false one. The first one to announce that he is God, he will be the liar. Is it really that difficult? The first one is the false one. And yet, most of the people will fall in the trap. I think I should add a few words about Islam to prevent possible misunderstandings, also based on the previous episode about the Mahdi. Although the future caliphate will be on the right path, straight against the Antichrist, against the devil, this doesn't mean that all Muslims will be saved or that all Muslims will participate in that. Just on the contrary, the Islamic prophecies themselves mention few occasions on which a Muslim army will fight against the good Muslims. According to one of these prophecies, the Kaaba, the most sacred site in Islam, inside the Masjid al-Haram in Mecca, that will be destroyed by Abyssinian, means Ethiopian army. The second possibility they give is that it will be destroyed by Juj and Majuj. There will be a separate episode about that. But this hint of Abyssinia is kind of making me think that since the time of the so-called Arab Spring, the Northern African region is particularly heavily infested with undercover personages in the dresses of religious or political well-wishers of the Muslims. They are pretending to be Muslims themselves. So because of the Arab Spring, we know that that region, Northern Africa, is very heavily infiltrated. Of course, it won't be better now. That on one hand. On second hand, the Jahenny prophecies, which we just heard, and third, the Nostradamus, who says that cruel Muslim sect from Northern Africa, hiding knives under their robes, men without laws. This makes me think that criminal elements from that region might be used in a sinister way during these events, which of course should in no way promote hatred towards the general populace of that region. People there, as everywhere else, in their majority are normal. So when should we expect all these events mentioned in this video? Mary Julie said that it will be us who will see them. The only indications she gave in terms of years are 200 and at another occasion 200 and a little bit more years. And a small clarification that 200, she said, it's 200 years of democracy. So if we apply our modern understanding of when democracy started, although that may not be exactly correct because of the time shifts mentioned in the Survivors documentary, but let's say it is about right because it's a relatively recent event. So 200 years would be like 30 years ago. But also she said 200 and a little bit more. So to summarize, she said that now is the time of the prophecy. She also said, sometime before the sinister signs are seen on the earth, everybody will already feel in the heart the effect of Lord's justice, and they will know that the time is not far away. She also said that the Lord will give his warnings by the signs of nature at the beginning of each year. And something else which opens a very interesting topic, quote, by about 12 years shall the millennium have passed, when the resplendent mantle of legitimate power shall emerge from the shadows where it was being kept by the schism. From the narration it is clear that by legitimate power she means Christ coming to restore the righteous rulers on earth, which have been kept in the shadow by the schism. Schisms she calls all this fraud and the secret sects which organize the betrayal. They sold the humanity. So the interesting thing here is about 12 years shall have the millennium passed. This, by the way, in similar formulation is found in many other Christian and biblical prophecies. So millennium usually means 1000 years. And basically all these prophecies that Christ will come back in a millennium means he will come 1000 years after his first appearance, which is absolutely in correspondence with what will happen, keeping in mind that most likely, like 99% at this point, I'm sure, the first appearance of Christ was about 1000 years ago and not 2000. I have made lots of videos about this. So it really seems that the first coming was about 1000 years ago. Now, the most reliable dating we have from that time is the attempt of Anatoly Fomenko, and he doesn't say exactly 1000, but 20 something years left, which means that now in these years that we are now, it will be exactly 1000 years. If his estimate is correct, which is only an estimate, and I think that the most reliable source for dating will be Paramonov, Alexander Paramonov, although for now he doesn't tell much about these things, but he said that that date is about correct. So following this calculation of the 1 millennium for the second appearance of Christ, we also get exactly our decade as, and the beginning of the next decade, as the most likely time of Christ to manifest again. And another interesting remark on the words of Jahenny is her explanation of the term democracy as coming from demonocracy. And by the way, when we delve a little bit into linguistics, it turns out that this lady, which had no formal education at all and was illiterate, knows more about linguistics than the modern people who think that they are learned. They search online and they are told that democracy means rule of the people, because demos means citizens, so it means the citizens rule. Well, if we open specialized books on ancient Greece, from where this term was taken, it turns out that the situation is actually radically different. And first of all, demos is the root of the word is related to demons. And second of all, citizens. What is citizens? Nowadays, even if you live in a village, still you will be a citizen of your country. But back in those days, when the original demos term was used, citizens referred only to people who lived in the cities, citizen, from the city, not from the village, as opposed to those from the village, who in their turn were called ochlas. And going further, demos did not mean simply a city dweller. They were legitimate, like passport holders, so to say, in modern terms, of a given city. They were a special caste that was actually inimical and oppressive to the other castes, and although they were a small minority, they ruled by oppression. So when the modern Wikipedia tells you that democracy means rule of the citizens, they forget to tell you what kind of citizens they mean. And now a few lines from the Prophecies, some out of the many, about the actual return of Christ, which will happen, quote, at the moment when there will be the least appearance of hope left. This is how the secret works will slowly come to an end after having been veiled in appearance. This these secret works may refer to the way in which God in his incarnation as Christ has been directing actually all this behind the scenes. After having long been veiled in appearance, as confirmed by many other prophecies, during the tribulation itself, most of the people will not see the hand of God behind everything that is happening, so for them it will be veiled, but at the end God will openly reveal himself. And as far as those crowds of youths who have been shouting just weeks or months before that, death to Christ and death to the church, they will not feel very comfortable with their own selves during the judgment day. So Christ will be the king of all, but France, which at that time will be called New France, it will have its own local king as well, and those who are interested in details, there are few vague hints about his lineage and origins in the Prophecies of Jahenny, which they can easily find on the original website with the French originals. There will be enemies still standing when the king takes possession, because he will come during the storm, but he will be safe, as the Mother of God protects him as her own son and has reserved him to be the heir to a merited crown. The days of exile will still have been hard and cost dearly to this faithful king. He will be most greatly rewarded. The army of the just king, mixed with other brave people, will cross over through most of France under the fire of the signs of God. He will come out of Brittany to go back just up the river Rhine, where the Savior of the earth must arrive with his own army. They will join together under the star of victory. Jahenny explained that although at this moment Christ would have killed the Antichrist, and the world would already know who he is, still the demons, the blood drinkers, the pedophiles, their psyche is such that they just cannot even think of surrendering. They will continue fighting, even when Christ comes up to the French border with his small army. And he will bewilder their minds, and they will get confused, they won't be able to fight him. Also, Alexander Paramonov explained that Christ in his earthly form, this is how he will manage things. Because he will need to get involved in lots of fighting, but he will not use the guns we have. He will use something like similar to these most advanced Asian martial arts, in which you don't really need to even touch the opponent. This is how Jahenny describes those who will simply never surrender. They are fierce demons, they have a strange hunger to feed and to be fed. They need victims, the flesh of ministers of God, the flesh of his children, the blood of their veins. And this is quite literal, this is not symbolic. These ancient cults are still thriving, sadly. There are still tribes which maintain them. They have their holidays, celebrations they call them, for sacrificing people, eating them, burning them. These dates, they are not secret, and when the time of this so-called holiday comes, all of a sudden at that time all over the world thousands of children go missing. Just the week before that. What a coincidence. And what a coincidence that the police in all countries keeps quiet, and the mass media as well. Back to the prophecies. God will help the king so powerfully that men will not understand the speed with which war and peace are made. Now, crowning the kings would be something trivial, especially in those in such a military situation, most modern people would think, because they don't give much importance to ritual usually. But because Christ will come to reinstitute again the oldest spiritual teaching from the very beginning, he will give much importance to the details of preserving those very important ancient lineages and rituals to which people should start giving importance again if they don't want to forget their ancestry as descendants of the gods, and then eventually to reach our current deplorable state. It will be difficult to find a great pastor then, because the vacuum will be so deep that a great part of the earth will be uninhabited. It will not be a pastor of the center who will have the honor of crowning in glory the king, means it will not be a bishop of Paris. The pastor will be young, 45 years will not have sounded. He will come from the diocese of Aix, the glorious and worthy child of God who will crown the true king. On the top of the ruins of the center of Paris, when the earth will be much deserted, we'll have to travel from far away. And the travel itself will be quite an ordeal for him, because if you remember earlier, entire villages will be just gone missing. One will have to walk kilometers before seeing another person. And my guess is that under those circumstances, the fast train may not come. So here is a very good question. When they use that bioweapon, why cans will be more safe than food which is sealed in jars? Well, first of all, probably all this is referring to the food which will be somehow outside, maybe, because if the food inside the rooms of the house is as well made poisonous, then the people may die anyway. So this may refer only for food which is exposed to the outside air. I'm not sure. Thus far, being more securely sealed in glass jars than in cans, apparently it is not a question of being airtight seal, but some sort of devilish radiation, in the same way as you can make a Faraday cage for devices or yourself with metal foil, and even if it is not airtight, still it will protect you from certain type of radiation, while even if you are airtight sealed in a glass jar, that will not protect you, because it's the material and not the airtight factor. I will have an entire episode with all kinds of hints and suggestions of how to prepare for these times. But first of all, I think the most important is that people will know the prophecies well. That's why I make these detailed episodes, so that at every step people can figure out for themselves, are we following this timeline as it is in the prophecy, or we're somewhere else. Here a viewer from Finland is complaining of demon attacks every day. Well, many people are gonna be suffering from this during the tribulation, and the most important preparation, in my view, is to know how to defend ourselves from such attacks. Asking others to pray for us is not only less effective, but in those times there will be nobody to ask, because everybody around will be in the same predicament. You can see my video about the Vedic mantras if you want to use mantras. Also, I hope soon to be able to complete my series on using crystals, not just for healing, but also they are an excellent way for protection. Probably the easiest, I would say. But the first and most urgent measure which I would recommend to you is to see my video on the simple meditation and start that as of today, because no matter which technique you will use, still the power, your personal power behind it, which you are putting in that technique, that will be what ultimately counts. Somebody is asking me if I'm Hindu, do I still believe in Christ? Well, as far as I understand, Christ is actually Kalki. After making a video on this, which you can find on my channel, I also heard from Alexander Paramonov that Kali Yuga is definitely the night of the Svarog, so that is yet one more hint that I am on the right track. It's not me who discovered that Christ is Kalki. It came to my mind and I was already thinking, well, I don't think I'm the first one who came up with this idea, and I did a search, and indeed there have been other people who figured it out even before me, because it's such an obvious connection. But even if nobody has made this connection before me, or even if Christ was not there as Kalki in the Vedic tradition, still the Vedic environment is so dynamic and of such a high level that actually discovering new forms of God is an integral part of it. For example, I have a video called Is God a Tulpa, where I mention the form of Devi Pratyangira. She's actually named after the two sages who first became aware of this form of God. If we as souls, if we make a spiritual evolution and discover new and new horizons, sometimes very quickly, then can you imagine how God himself is evolving and what is he discovering? No, we can't even imagine that, but at least we should acknowledge it according to the level we have, which is kind of an embryonic level of a soul that is from the set material. He says, yes, your human form, you are souls, you are beings, but this is such an early level of development of consciousness as an embryo is compared to an adult person. So even mystics in human form, they can create tulpas. So what can God create? We can't even imagine, and discovering some of those forms is an integral part of Hinduism. There are countless narrations in the Puranas, in the Itihasas, of how new forms of God appear and how people discover them. There will be two more very important episodes about the Antichrist. We should know about him so that we can recognize him, and second, about his deceit, which will be very subtle, as Jahenny explained. I think those two will be particularly important for those who do not wish to join knowingly or unknowingly the super duper pedophile club. But on the other hand, all episodes are important, and even what is not essential, that also needs to be understood so that the essential will come in proper context and we will be able to easily recognize it when it happens. And in this way we will never be disoriented or lost during the tribulation. You are also most welcome to reload or redistribute, as long as it is not commercial, this entire series. All of the images used are safe. They are permitted for non-commercial reuse. And I have even activated for time beings a lot of unlisted videos, including these survivors. You can find the link on the homepage of my channel. Despite the danger of the copyright troubles, which I explained in detail in previous videos, the reason for which I dare to activate them is that in this corona panic, Actually, international prosecution is made difficult because the borders are not really completely opened, and courts might be attending to more urgent matters. So take advantage of this. There are plenty of online tools. Just use any search engine, type in, download YouTube playlists for free, and you will find plenty of tools. So I recommend downloading the entire playlist with the Survivors episodes and another playlist called Unlisted Videos. So my plan was to include all the important prophecies from Mary Jahenny in this video. However, that turned out to be impossible. It is too long already, and that's why the episodes about the religion of the Antichrist, the episode about Italy, and the episode about the Days of Darkness, those will be based mostly or exclusively on her prophecies again, and the episode about England to some extent. And finally, I would like to include again the prophecy, the Hopi prophecy from the previous episodes, and I hope now it will have even more meaning to you.
We have teachings and prophecies informing us that we must be alert for the signs and omens which will come about to give us courage and strength to stand on our beliefs. Blood will flow, our hair and our clothing will be scattered upon the earth. Nature will speak to us with its mighty breath of wind. There will be earthquakes and floods causing great disasters, changes in the seasons and in the weather, disappearance of wildlife, and famine in different forms. There will be gradual corruption and confusion among the leaders and the people all over the world, and wars will come about like powerful winds. All of this has been planned from the beginning of creation.